When you're talking about compact luxury SUVs in Malaysia, the market has looked kind of boring for a while. You have the BMW X1, the Audi Q3, the Volvo XC40 and the Mercedes-Benz GLA, and for the most part they offer broadly the same thing. These are cars aimed at a younger generation with interesting features meant to appeal to that younger crowd and not much else. However, if you want to stand out from the crowd, Mercedes-Benz Malaysia now has a slightly different offering. This is the Mercedes-Benz GLB. A lot more upright, a lot more boxy, a lot more typical SUV, seen for the first time in the compact SUV space. Aside from the Volvo XC40, there is nothing else quite this upright. But more importantly, there is a question that needs to be asked. Is the GLB special enough, distinctive enough to define itself differently than the Mercedes-Benz GLA, with which it shares its platform, engine and even bits of the interior? Is this just a fat GLA, or is this a different model all in its own right? My name is Aiman I. Abdullah. This is Malaysian Motoring. This is our review of the Mercedes-Benz GLB 200 Progressive Line.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
The Mercedes-Benz GLB is available in Malaysia in two options. You can get it as the GLB 200 Progressive Line, which you see here, the GLB 250 AMG line, as well as the Mercedes AMG 35, GLB 35 that is. But of course, if you're looking for a standard non-AMG car, you have the two options I mentioned earlier. Now, to talk about the exterior of this particular car, as you can see, as I said earlier, this car is very boxy, very upright, very typical SUV if you look at it. You have a very bluff front end, these big square headlights, these very prominent fog lights down in the corners, all meant to make the car look very rugged and so on. As you can see here with the chrome bash plate as well and the dual louver grille. The Mercedes-Benz Large Star, that's standard of course, and these full LED headlights are also standard across both the GLB 200 and the GLB 250. Down the side you get these 18-inch alloy wheels wrapped in Continental Eco Contact 6 tyres. Now it's worth noting that of course with the GLB 250 you get a different design, alloy wheels, but these ones are a bit weird. I understand that the design is probably for aerodynamic purposes because a lot of it has been filled in, so I'm sure it cuts through the air better and reduces the drag coefficient by some infinitesimal number that only a German engineer will understand. But as far as I'm concerned, it looks a little bit weird. You do get this prominent body cladding all the way down the side, again because this is an SUV, so it wants to emphasize its SUV-ness. You also get chrome window surrounds, a little bit of garnish here, chrome door handles and a functional chrome roof rail, which admittedly makes this car look a lot more utilitarian than you would expect. Now, as I said, this car shares a lot with the Mercedes-Benz GLA. However, because this is the more practical SUV with 7 seats no less, the roof line has been changed, so now it's a lot straighter than before. You get a lot more of a glass house. You also get a much larger quarter light back here. You also get this little bit of a kink in the window line for reasons, and you also get a more pronounced and prominent rear wheel arch. But down the rear, this is where the biggest difference between the GLB and the GLA is obvious lah. So you have a much squarer back end with a much more bluff rear windscreen. This is a lot straighter than the more curvy GLA. You also get the typical Mercedes-Benz SUV rear tail lights design with the squares and the whatever, and it's full LED of course because it's a Mercedes-Benz, and because this is a progressive line you also get a large chrome thing sort of underneath on this unpainted portion of the bumper. You also get a couple of fake exhaust exits. They are completely fake. I can actually touch the thing in here, like there's nothing going on down there. Not sure why that is. I guess it's just a design feature. You also get a little chrome scuff plate here. Now, let's take a look at what's in the back. So, you get an electric tailgate as standard, replete with a hands-free operation, but I'm not going to do that because you'll just laugh at me looking stupid trying to swing my foot underneath. But in any case, with the rear seats up, the rearmost seats up, you don't have that much space at all. In fact, if you have a bag, that's about all you can put in there. maybe 2 of these, which is not really fitting for a car that can fit up to 7 people. However, this car, I suspect, is not really designed to be a 7-seater all the time. So the majority of the time you'll use this as a 5-seater. And when you do, you have a lot more space back here. Now, with the rearmost seats folded, you have a large amount of space back here. The second row can be slid fore and aft, again to increase the amount of space or to give the second row passengers a little bit more leg room. You can also adjust the recline angle of the second row seats in various different ways in order to either improve the comfort or to reduce the comfort, I guess. You also get the tonneau cover, which can be hidden underneath the boot floor, but it is a little bit of a palaver to have to move stuff out of the way and so on. But in any case, the GLB should appeal to the potential Mercedes GLA buyer who thought that the boot was a bit too small, because you get a lot more space back here for stuff. The loading angle is a little bit better, the opening is a bit better, and there's just a lot more space to do stuff back here. I think it's worth noting, however, that the amount of space offered in the third row, I'm getting ahead of myself, we should talk about that, the interior part. But in any case, enough about this. Let's go and talk about the inside, where we have some more good and bad things to talk about. So inside the Mercedes-Benz GLB, as I said, there are some good things and some bad things. So for starters, you have this very nicely designed interior. You have these propeller style air vents. You have these 2 large, wide, high definition screens in front of you, one of which is a touchscreen for the center, but we'll talk about that in a second. You have this lovely steering wheel with its touch sensitive pad thingies or whatever. This is a very nice modern interior. Everything in here, as far as you can see, is leather, or so you think. So you have a leather wrapped steering wheel, which is nice. You get these stitched door tops here and more leatherette here and on the seats. These seats and the door tops and all that, this is all Artico, which is man-made leather. Unfortunately, it is not genuine leather. And as much as I'd like to say that you can't tell the difference, you can tell the difference. But it's all right, I guess. However, because this is the GLB, which means it's more tough and SUV-like, you get these sort of metallic-y inserts here and on the doors and stuff to make the car look and feel a bit tougher, a bit more, you know, ready for an active lifestyle or whatever else. And I have to say that this does differentiate it from the A-Class and the GLA just a little bit. And it works, sort of. Now, onto the things that I do not like. Let's see. There's a lot of piano black plastic down here, which is not very nice. This car only comes with USB-C ports, which is a bit difficult if you don't have a USB-C to C cable for your Android phone or a C to Lightning cable for your iPhone. Again, just expanses of piano black plastic. You also get more black plastic up here, and there's lots of nasty plastic sort of like all over the place. Admittedly, these are not places that you touch very often, so it's fine, I guess, but you know, for a car that's in excess of 250,000 ringgit, it's a bit disappointing to find quite so much nasty plastic. In addition to all that, this car also is bereft of the ambient lighting package that has come to signify compact Mercedes-Benz models, or modern compact Mercedes-Benz models. And so this car doesn't give you that really gorgeous and enthralling light show that you get with, for example, the Mercedes-Benz A250 hatch, or the A250 saloon, or the GLA-250, or even the GLB-250. The GLB-200 that we're in today feels a little bit basic in that regard. The black on black interior doesn't help either. The expanses of piano black plastic also do not help. But at the very least, for our market, the GLB-200 does come with both the widescreen displays, as I mentioned earlier. So this is Mercedes-Benz's MBUX system, which is incredibly responsive and incredibly user-friendly. I personally really like this interface. I especially like the fact that you can manipulate it using the touchpad here, or the touchpad here, or you can even just touch and swipe. And because the ergonomics in this car are so great, even as you're seated here as a driver in the correct driving position, you can still very easily reach the center screen should you need to. Of course, you wouldn't want to because you have a touchpad here and a touchpad here, so really touching it is not really all that necessary. That said though, the fact that you have to use this screen quite often is a little bit annoying. I'll give you one particular example. If you want to adjust the fan speed, there is a button for it here. If you'd like to adjust the recirculation, there is a button for it here. If you'd like to change the temperature, there is a toggle here and a toggle here, because this car comes with dual zone climate control. However, if you'd like to change the direction of the fan or the air conditioning blowing, you have to press the menu thing, and then you have to manipulate it using this touchpad or your finger or this touchpad here in order to get it to the right direction. So there's just a lot of operations required to make this work, which I feel is a little bit confusing. But in any case, enough about the MBUX system and all of its wondrousness, because this is otherwise a really, really good system. Let's talk about the rear. So now we are in the back of the Mercedes-Benz GLB, and as you can see, there is an enormous amount of space back here. So this seat is set up in my driving position. I'm about 160 odd, something below 170 centimeters apparently. As you can see, I have an enormous amount of legroom and knee room. I have an enormous amount of headroom thanks to this squarish roofline. And I have to say, life back here is rather nice. I get some rather large door bins with bottle holders here, and I still get the stitched leather door top, leatherette door top at least. I even get a couple of aircon vents back here and a couple of USB-C ports in this little cubby there, where there's also a little box for you to put matches and a little shelf up here for you to put more matches, I guess. You also get a rear armrest, which folds out like this with a couple cup holders in here. And I must say the operation of stuff back here is quite nice. In terms of overall quality, you get some harsh plastic on the back of the seats, you get some harsh plastic down here, but most of the touch points are all quite nice and they feel quite plush. Now, it is worth noting, however, that these seats are now in their most reclined and most far back position. I can actually pull this seat further forward in order to increase the amount of legroom for the third row, and even in its furthest most position, with again the driver's seat set up in my driving position, I still have plenty of space to tuck my feet in underneath the seat. I still have a good amount of knee room and a good amount of headroom. It's clear to me that this is a larger car than the Mercedes-Benz GLA, which means, again, if you are looking for a SUV, a premium SUV that doesn't take up too much space on the road but still offers a decent amount of space inside, the Mercedes-Benz GLB may appeal to you. That said though, if you're looking at the GLB because you want a 7-seater, then I must warn you, the third row seats are very tight. It is worth noting that they are very well scalloped in terms of the backrest and the seat base itself, which means that compared to other 7-seater SUVs, the seats themselves feel a lot more inviting. However, there is very little footroom, very little knee room, and a little amount of headroom, even for someone of my size. And for adults, it's definitely not suitable. However, the two rearmost seats do come with ISOFIX mounts, which means that if you have a slightly larger family with a couple of infants or a couple of toddlers, you can actually put them back there and leave the adults in the second row, which means this car could be a little bit more flexible in that regard. It is worth noting, however, that although there are USB-C ports so that toddlers and children can keep their iPads and God knows whatever else charged up, there are no aircon vents, which means they may die of heat stroke. Anyway, I'm kidding, of course. This is a Mercedes-Benz air conditioning and but anyway, enough about the interior and the lack of space in the third row and the lack of air conditioning vents for a car being sold in the tropical market. Let's talk about the driving experience, shall we? So in the GLB 200, under the bonnet, there is not a 2-litre, but rather a 1.33-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine sourced from Renault, which puts out about 160 horsepower and some amount of Newton meters of torque. My video editor will insert the graphics below. And that power is sent to the front wheels via a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic gearbox. Now, this is one of 2 engine options in the GLB. The GLB 250 comes with a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine with a little bit more power, a little bit more torque, but using the same engine, using the same transmission nonetheless, but power goes to all 4 wheels via Mercedes-Benz's 4MATIC all-wheel drive system. Now, it's worth noting that the engine and powertrain makes a big difference in terms of how the GLB feels to drive. This GLB 200 with the base engine does feel a little bit wanting. So in terms of Mercedes-Benz experience, in terms of the driving experience and so on, being a luxury car, you will want a bit more power. You'll want excess. That's what luxury is, having more than what you need. But in this car, it feels like you have just enough. It pulls the car along pretty decently, but you're never going to be going anywhere very quickly. It can get you up to motorway speeds and keep you there, but it takes its time about getting there. On top of that, it also means, stop interrupting me. It also means that when you are on the motorway, you may not want to cruise at overly high speeds because that may cause the engine to struggle quite a bit, being a small forced induction motor rather than a larger blown motor with more power to spare. However, when you're on the motorway, that's another point that I'd like to raise. This is definitely designed to be more of a city car. You see, the GLB has this relatively small engine, which is best used in town speeds and so on and so forth. And in addition to that, it's sort of like all the controls in this car are very light, and it sort of lends itself to town driving pretty well. Because when you're on the motorway, when you start hitting speeds sort of like above 100 kilometers an hour, things start to unravel a little bit. So for starters, the steering wheel of this car is ridiculously light in comfort and eco mode. I've had to drive this car in individual mode in order to have the steering wheel in sport, so it's a little bit heavier, while keeping the engine and transmission in eco. And there is quite a lot of wind and road roar, which is rather unbecoming for a car of this at this price point. Especially the Volvo XC40, for example, is very noteworthy for having very little wind noise, and if you were to get the T5 variant, there is also considerably less intrusion from tire noise at motorway speeds. It's also worth noting that the XC40 especially, and the BMW X1 and so on, control their body lean quite a bit better, especially through the corners. This car is relatively softly sprung, and so when you're going through corners, all of that weight transfer really pushes the car here and there, and it lends to a slightly less confidence-inspiring experience behind the wheel. This is certainly not a car for keen drivers. I believe that if you're shopping in this segment and you're looking for an SUV that can give you some degree of driving thrills, you may be better served by something like the BMW X1 or even the Volvo XC40 T5 all-wheel drive, as those cars offer slightly better body control and a slightly more connected driving experience. This car is very uncommunicative, both in terms of steering wheel and general feel. On top of that, the Volvo XC40 would offer considerably more in terms of safety features. This car, although it does come with autonomous emergency braking and pre-collision warning, it doesn't come with things like blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, which is a notable omission for a car that will be spending most of its time in town. You want these things, particularly when you're navigating through town streets with bikes and so on and so forth. And I feel that these omissions, especially at this price point, are definitely noteworthy. On top of that, obviously compared to the XC40, this car doesn't offer anything in the way of semi-autonomous driving. The Volvo XC40 does offer level 2 semi-autonomy, which means that on the motorway it has adaptive cruise control, lane centering assist, and all sorts of other nonsense. And as a result, you would tend to feel a lot more confident covering large distances, long distances in such a car. On top of that, the Volvo XC40 also comes with a larger 2-litre engine, which means that on the motorway it feels like it's got a lot more torque and a lot more grunt to keep you going. So, as far as I'm concerned, the Mercedes-Benz GLB 200 specifically is a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, I appreciate the aesthetics. I like the fact that it's very upright and boxy, a bit like the Volvo XC40 that I keep mentioning, but I feel like compared to a lot of other compact SUVs in the premium segment, this car has a distinctly different appeal in terms of the visual trickery. But in terms of the overall driving experience, I feel like the GLB 200 is still somewhat compromised. This engine is a little bit too small, particularly in this application. As a result, the car does tend to feel strained quite a bit. On top of that, the emissions in terms of interior accoutrements, such as the ambient lighting, for example, it's one of those things that really detracts from the overall experience. The compact Mercedes-Benz lineup is very noteworthy for its very flashy interiors, and this interior, unfortunately, is just devoid of flash. And when you don't have that flash distract you, you can't help but look at all of the rather nasty materials and so on and so forth, because there's nothing to distract you. And that just kind of takes away from that overall experience. The other matter, of course, is in terms of price. The Mercedes-Benz GLB arrives in Malaysia as a completely imported vehicle. It's not assembled in Malaysia at all, and as a result, it is notably more expensive than the competition, and it does put it within spitting distance of some larger rivals. So as a result, it makes you wonder if the GLB 200 is worth it at all. Now, I will reserve my comments about the GLB 250 as well as the AMG GLB 35, as I'm made to understand that those cars offer a distinctly different experience for drivers and passengers alike, and so I look forward to reviewing those in due course and letting you know what those are like. But as for the GLB 200, I reckon you'd just be better off at saving a little bit more money for the down payment and getting into a GLB 250, because the overall experience in this kind of leaves you wanting.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
But anyway, that's been my review of the Mercedes-Benz GLB 200. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. And if you have any questions at all, or if you're looking for the best deal on a new car, please get in touch with us on any of our social media channels. We'll be more than happy to help you out. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, take care, jangan bodoh.